About this love. About this. About this love. About this love. Love. How you guys doing today? You're rocking with myself, Dale Skinner, and my wife, Charel.
Hey.
Last week we spoke about what kept us grounded in our marriage, early on in our marriage. But before we begin the conversation, I did want to ask you just to make sure you follow us on Facebook, About This Love, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, About This Love. And on these platforms, you can also stream our podcast as well. And we're also on Audio Mac. Audio Mac, you can also stream as well as download, and you don't have to be logged in on Audio Mac. You can just search About This Love, and you should be able to listen to the podcast and download it as well without having to log in, which is why I'm a big fan of Audio Mac. I'll start off early on in our marriage. I think one of the things that we learn now, looking back then, is that oftentimes we didn't really communicate or vocalize our needs and desires, and because of that, it kind of created tension within the marriage.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in the beginning of our marriage, not exactly our desires. For me, it was more so of just communication overall, which I've heard from other couples. That's just a thing that you grow throughout your marriage. It's just different forms and different styles of communicating. I don't know. I think that like in the very beginning, I think that could be very hard because we're both speaking the same language, right? We're both speaking English, but it's like you're not hearing what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think like even now, sometimes it's a frustration, and I think one of the things it is that oftentimes I feel like I'm kind of thinking about the movie Think Like a Man. Just not that I want to go into details about the movie, but I think the part that I do like about it is just the aspect of I'll use this analogy as far as in a relationship or a marriage, is that oftentimes a woman may have an idea or have what she want to do for her husband, but it's from the standpoint of a woman, not a man. So it's like, okay, you may be doing something for me or wanting to surprise me, and that's cool. That's cool and fine. But it's like sometimes it's like, well, what would my husband actually want or prefer? Oftentimes in marriage, in our marriage, I find myself doing things that I think my wife would like, and she's like, "Well, nah, actually, I would have been cool with A, B, C, and D," and then you kind of left like, "Oh man, I wish I would have just did A, B, C, and D." But it's like, again, you don't know, because when you don't really ask your spouse, well, what would you do for your birthday, or what would you do, on vacation? I think one of my a friend of ours, him and his wife actually counsels us a lot, and just gives us advice on marriage. They've been married for like 16, 17 years now. But one of the things that he says is that like he'll ask his wife like throughout the year, babe, what would you want to do for your birthday? Or what would you want to do? And just kind of take a mental note of it. Like, not even, sometimes he's just asking her, trying to get an answer, and he does, and without realizing that she tells him, but she's not aware, because like her birthday might be like until like 4 or 5 months ahead. So it's like, but he's asking to kind of engage her.
He said to get to know her.
Yeah, to get to know her, to know what she wants, so he doesn't have to do something for her birthday that he may think she would like, but then she might not like it. Of course, your spouse may not tell you that they don't like it, but it's like, okay, I'd rather just ask you and know what you like than kind of do something for you, and you like I'll say like fake like you like it. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't think it would be fake. You know what? I think what he said, and we didn't give this disclaimer in the beginning, but we do have a addition in the studio. We have Baby Bump sitting in on another podcast, or sleeping in on another podcast. So if you hear like grunts or coos, it's just Baby Bump chilling with us while she's taking a nap. So our friend said to us was basically how just ask your spouse a lot of questions. And in the beginning, if I'm honest, like, we didn't do that. I mean, I asked you questions, and you may have asked me questions, but I feel like a lot of times it turned into an argument, because it was like, well, why are you asking questions? Well, are you judging me? Well, are you? Nah, it was kind of rough, because it's like, well, you always got something to say about what I'm doing. But it was like, no, I just, I want to get to the heart of the matter of, like you were saying, I don't want to assume that you like X, Y, and Z on your birthday. But if we can't communicate that, or even if I can't get my question or my statement out to you in a certain way where you understand it, if I can't articulate myself in the way that you understand it, then it can cause a whole lot of other issues. And I think that really broke down our communication in the beginning of our marriage.
Because I'll say, like, yes, communicating is key and essential in any relationship, but also understanding the way that people communicate. It's kind of like, I know people who are very rough around the edges.
What does that mean?
What I mean is, like, I'll say they're probably not a people's person. And when I first, was introduced to certain individuals like that, we would hit it off, on the wrong note. But as you begin to be around people more and more, you actually learn how to communicate. You're like, oh, they're actually not being a butthole. That's just really how they are, unfortunately. So I think
Wait,
even in marriage, go ahead.
Really quick. So you're saying they're not being a butthole, that's just how they are. What you're saying is they're just a difficult person?
In a nutshell, yeah. I say that because it's like, one of the things that you learn about your spouse and is that different people respond and communicate differently. It's kind of like my wife, when we first got married, I thought she was very vague. I thought she was very vague, and it used to piss me.
I was very vague?
Yeah, and it used to piss me off because I'm a very blunt person. And I remember the first time I took her home to meet my family. She was like, "Oh, I see why you're so blunt. It's because your family, they kind of just say what they have to say and ask what they have to ask, not in a disrespectful manner, but it's like, why beat around the bush? Just say what you have to say, or just, you know what I'm saying, or ask what you have to ask." And I guess my thing is, like, when I'm done talking to you, I don't want to leave room in your head for you to interpret what I said to you. I want you to know what I said, understand what I said, and I have to be like, well, what do you mean by that? Oh, wait. So I think, again, when we first got married, the biggest conflict in our marriage came because we didn't understand how each other communicated, and by understand, I mean, we really didn't understand it at all. Like you can talk to somebody and have a conversation, but again, if you don't understand the way that they communicate or the way that they receive information, it kind of becomes irrelevant in a sense.
Well, it's not irrelevant. Not if you keep trying. Like, it goes back to what I said in the last podcast. Like, my goal for this year was to communicate even when it's difficult. Like, with us working through our communicating style, and even with this podcast, I felt that it was hard to communicate at times because, like, it's a conversation, but it's still like, I still want to push past, like, even in our day-to-day, I still want to push past, not that you may be offended, but I want to push past sorry if this comes off wrong, but I'm hurt, you're hurt. Let's push past our hurt and still talk, because I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of couples can run into. I mean, we've ran into that as well. Just, okay, I'm hurt or you're hurt. And so now we walking on eggshells because I can't say, or if I do say this, then
you get upset.
You're upset. If I don't say it, then you upset. Exactly. And nothing's getting talked about, nothing's getting done. And eventually I'm just going to go and talk to somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Because it just seems easier. And plus, of course, it's easier because I don't got to be in their face every day. I don't have to deal with that. I don't have responsibility to them. And so I can kind of just say whatever, say what's on my heart, hang up the phone. Or if they get upset with me, it's like, oh, well, they're upset with me. All right, I'll let a week blow by. I'll, give them time to cool off. But when you're married, like, you can't do that. And I think we weren't even giving each other the chance to even cool off. It was like, you mad, whatever. I'm mad, whatever. Bump that. I'm more mad than you are. And we're going to talk about it. And then it's like a big blow up. And so just working through that.
And being humble too. I remember one of the things that my a friend of ours told us, we've been married. I mean, everybody that we know, we're friends. We've been married for like 10 plus years. But I remember I was talking to my wife, and she was like, "Yo, why you shouting at me?" I was like, "Yo, I'm not shouting at you. What are you talking about?" I had went outside to the car to get something real quick, and he kind of came outside on a sneak tip with me, and he was like, "Yo, I know you're new to marriage, so let me give you a little advice. If your wife tells you that you're shouting or yelling, then you're yelling and shouting." He was, "I don't care, what you think." He said, "But if your spouse tells you, you're talking too loud or you're shouting, then you're shouting. So kind of work on your tone." And he was like, and I really appreciate that because again, a perfect example of just how it's like, okay, yeah, I may have interpreted the way my tone was, it wasn't shouting or yelling. But it's like, it doesn't matter. If the person that is receiving what you're saying, it takes it as you're yelling and shouting, then you're yelling and shouting. So you need to kind of bring your tone down a little bit. But I think, and that takes being humble, you know what I'm saying? 'Cause I could have been like, man, bump that, man. You gonna hear what I have to say, and this is how I talk. And if you don't like it, oh well. But it's like, but come on, big dog. And, you really can't take that approach. And I feel like oftentimes people take that approach in marriage, in relationships, where this is how I am, and she knew this how I was when she met me. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's how you are, but I mean, it don't mean you have to remain that way. You know what I'm saying? I mean, hopefully we could both change and grow together. So I think that was just a practical example of just something that I did that kind of irked her nerves. And I used to do a lot too. I also used to, and I don't do it so much anymore, but I used to throw things at her. Not. You
used to throw? No, you did.
No, I'm talking about like you be like, hey, can you hand me that remote? And I would just throw it at you. You be like, can you stop doing that? It's like, it wasn't like nothing malicious. It's like, okay, you right there, like, yo, it's a remote. Like, what's the big deal? And she's like, nah, can you just put it in my hand and stop throwing things to me? I'm like, I'm like, all right, cool.
Well, no, okay. So disclaimer again, because it's not thrown. Well, in my mind, it just seems like you're throwing things at me. But it's like when someone's tossing something, like, hey, can you hand me that real quick? I'm gonna just toss it, across the room for you to catch it, kind of thing. And for traumatic reasons, childhood trauma, seeing different disputes, it's just kind of like, yeah, just don't start that. Just don't start tossing things, because then one day you tossing, the next day you ducking.
It's funny.
So, I mean, I definitely understand. I mean, because you said to me, yeah, I don't like yelling. I don't like your tone. But I'm just like, but you loud too. And it's like, nah, but I don't like your tone. Like, I don't like, you're getting loud. We can't talk.
And what? Nah. Well, mine, it wasn't that you was loud as much as it was. I used to think you was being sarcastic. Like, she would say something like, yo, are you being sarcastic right now? And she'd be like, nah, I'm being serious. I'm like, well, you need to change your tone then, because the way you're saying it gives me the impression that you're being sarcastic, and I don't like that. And again, like, somebody would look at that, somebody would hear that and be like, man, what's the big deal? But it's like, again, if someone is explaining to you the way that they receive information, then you have to give it to them the way they receive information. And it's like, that's okay. Everybody doesn't like. It took us the first few years of our marriage to learn that that's okay. Because, I mean, at the beginning of our marriage, it's just pride. But that's how I talk, and I ain't changing it for nobody. And let's keep it 100. I mean, even if you don't say it verbally, like, the actions didn't change. So it's like, you kind of saying it with your actions. So I think, like, the more we grew over the years, I think we kind of just learned, oh, okay, she don't like it when I talk that way, or, he don't like it when I say things in a tone that could come off as me being sarcastic, So I think that it's just hearing the heart of your spouse, or, what I'm saying, your wife, husband, and then kind of just changing your tone or just changing your behavior. And even if it means it's going to bring about peace, just change your behavior. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, but that's not easy though.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's trial and error. Mostly, more trial and error than what we really care to admit. But it is, it's trial and error. But you can change.
Oh, just like that, just like a snap of the finger. You could change. You could do it. No, I definitely believe that. I think it's still an ongoing thing with us in our marriage. I mean, even though we're 3 years married and forever more to go, we're still newlyweds. There's still things that I'm learning about you because you're growing, and there's things that you're learning about me because I'm growing, and there's different dynamics being added, with children, with, maybe job situations, life where we're living, things like that. It's new. One thing that was really scary, I figured out probably in my early 20s, prior to you and I getting married, I one day came to the realization that all the adults in the room are winging it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're figuring it out on the fly. And
not all the adults.
Not all the adults, but this is when I was in my 20s before I met you. But I say that to say, like, when situations come up, it's like, unless you have an example that you've seen, firsthand, or that you've had, you've heard from other older couples who've actually been through it, you're basically just winging it. So not to say that we're winging this marriage, but a lot of times it's like, oh, well, for someone outside of the marriage to be able to come up to us and say, oh, he should have did this or she should have did that. It's so easy for them to be on the outside looking in to say shoulda, coulda, woulda, but we still have to walk it out. Like when a situation comes up, like you were saying, I don't like when you toss things at me. Even if I ask you, hey, can you hand me the remote, and you're like tossing it towards me, and it's like, well, you probably have never heard that scenario with any other couples because, that was unique to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Being your wife. And so it's kind of like, yo, like you're going to another couple, or even if you didn't have, what I'm saying is if you didn't have those other couples, married couples to go to, it's almost like, yo, this girl tripping. And let's say you were to talk to just anybody, like a coworker or just a friend who's not married, it would just kind of be like, yeah, she is tripping. So I would just ignore that. You know what I'm saying? And you never know how that may have turned into a bigger thing. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've learned when it comes to people's relationships, and as I have this mentality, is that like if I'll take what I can and use it, and what I can't, I disregard it. Like the other day, one of my cousins had posted it on Facebook. And this is just like, it might be kind of off the topic, but I thought it was interesting. She posted, if you were married, would you be okay would you be okay if your husband was a stay at home dad? And me and my wife had just come from the my baby's doctor. What do you call him?
Pediatrician.
I'm sorry, pediatrician. And she actually had mentioned that to us, that her husband was a stay at home father, and she really kind of explained to us why. I had mentioned that in the comments on Facebook. I was like, it's actually and a lot of people, a lot of the women were saying, no, I ain't no, my man ain't staying home, and I ain't with all that, and nah, I don't care if we got 10 kids, he gonna be working, and da da da. And the only thing I said was that I was like, well, one, everyone's situation is different. I said one of the things that I've learned in marriage and being married and knowing people who are married is that what's cool with this married couple may not be cool with that married couple. So
absolutely,
the doctor, well, because it's to be upfront, she's a doctor. She probably makes over 100K a year. Probably that's probably just being generous. She probably makes like 150, 160 a year. So what do her husband care if he's at home all day with their 4 children? They make way more than enough money to be able to cover everything and then some. So it's like, again, it's probably not a big deal versus if you're making $50,000 a year and your husband's at home, it'll probably be a problem. So, but again, oftentimes I've learned in marriages, because just knowing people, like I may be able to take some of what you do in your marriage, but I may not be able to take and use all of it, because my wife and myself may be different. So I've just learned early on in my marriage that what works for you may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for you. Like I work at nighttime. The majority of my career, I've worked at nighttime. I'm a nighttime person. I'm not a morning person. My wife knows that, but a lot of people that we know, they're morning people. They get up very early in the morning. I could do it if because I have to, but I'm not a morning person, so that's not really my preference, but it works for me and my wife that I'm not a morning person. She's cool with it. We've kind of arranged our life around that, and it works for us, but it may not work for you and your husband, or you and your wife.
I've had actually a family member who had to do that situation because of sickness. Where the husband was a stay-at-home father and spouse because of illness, and the wife had to return back to work, and she was, I guess, essentially the breadwinner, or she was bringing home the bacon, so to speak. But it's almost like you said, we're 2 individual people walking in this marriage, and we're completely different than them. Their situation called for that, and our situation doesn't. I think what does work and what can be applied to other couples is foundational things.
Yeah.
And let's be clear about that, because I've seen where other people are like, yeah, this is our marriage, we make up our own rules, and you got some other woman in your marriage, kind of disrespecting your wife, or, you're allowing another man to come in and disrespect your husband, or what have you, or just anybody just come and disrespect your spouse because you guys are making up your own rules. Like, I've witnessed that as well in someone's marriage, and I'm like, wow, yes, you're making up your own rules, or you don't have rules at all, or you guys never discussed it or made it clear. But now there's an issue, there's a situation. And I think that's the one thing that you and I wanted to steer clear of, is having those types of situations or encountering those in our marriage. With the different difficulties that we've actually encountered thus far in our marriage, I will say that whenever I've told you that I felt disrespected, not that, anyone has blatantly come up and, disrespected me, but, I just felt a certain way about a situation, we've addressed it. And
Yeah.
I think because we communicated that and we started somewhere on that note and work towards that, I think that's helped us tremendously. There's just things that we don't have to deal with. And, I think that a lot of people overlook the foundational things in their marriage, and you can't do that. It could be detrimental especially in the beginning where, you're fragile. Like anything could come up, and it's almost like because you're still getting to know the person. And I feel like whether or not you've been dating for 6-7 years prior to marriage, or even longer than that prior to marriage, you don't know this person as a husband.
Yeah.
You don't know this person as a wife. Like what I knew of you, and we courted a short time before getting married, but what I knew of you was very, very different. You're a different person than you are now as being my husband. You are, because there's a different stress level. There's a different role of responsibility that you vowed to, take on in the eyes of, my family, our family members, our friends, in the eyes of God. And so that you have to walk out. And same for me, being your wife. And I think people overlook that oftentimes.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Like, cause you talking, I was thinking about it. I was like, that's one thing I can say for the most part in our marriage. Like, there's never really been like any blatantly disrespect. Like yeah, we've been disrespectful to each other, but it's never been like on purpose. Like, hey,
it might have been purposeful, like hitting below the belt.
What I mean is like I've been out in public and I've seen women call their dudes or husbands all kind of B's and in public. Oh, you a BAA, and you. I'm like, man, like what? My God, like I mean, we ain't never done anything on that level. Like where he calling a woman B's and O's in public. It's like, no, that's just. And
Yeah.
to be honest, like people don't even realize it's like it's kind of like when I mean it's not funny, but I laugh when people are like, oh well he or she's cheating. I'm like, well, I ain't surprised. I mean, y'all disrespectful. Y'all are disrespectful to each other. It's like, I'm not surprised. Like when a person can't get respect in their own home, like yeah, they going somewhere else. Like I mean, I don't know where you think they going, but it's like it just doesn't surprise me. Like some things it doesn't really surprise me, And I'm always the bad guy when I say that. Like I was talking to somebody today, and they were telling me about a situation. I said, well, yeah, I'm not really surprised. They was like, oh man, I can't believe you said that. I'm like, well, why can't you believe I said that? I said, I can't believe that you are surprised. Like, did you not see it coming? Like, what did you think was going to happen? So just, when people are in relationships where there is blatantly, just like disrespect, like just on a whole different level out of this world, it's like, well, I mean, yeah, I'm not surprised. You shouldn't be surprised. Whatever outcome that comes up in your relationship, you really shouldn't be surprised. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, like if you are disrespecting your spouse, then you shouldn't be surprised. I mean, yeah, but it's almost like it starts off as like a little fire, and then you think you just put it out, but there's still smoke. There's still smoking. You're not extinguishing the situation completely. It's kind of like, yeah, it died down. We moved on. We went to the party. We smiled for the photograph. Everything's okay. One thing that came to mind when you were saying that was you were talking about disrespect and like where people would go. Like, you're not surprised about where people would go. I really was thinking about it's still disrespect, but I really was thinking about how different couples, they don't really respect one another from the beginning. It's almost as though, kind of going back to your expectations of the person, like prior to getting married, and you see some red flags, but it's almost like, yeah, well, they'll understand. And like you said in the beginning of this conversation, like, well, that's just who I am. They should understand. Because I know some people who speak like that, time and time again to one another, and they jokingly do it, but it's like, yeah, you're crossing boundaries. It's like, when do you take the time to set those things? Like, when is it a good time to set those boundaries? Is it before? Is it after you're married? Because I can't remember when we.
I mean, I think before. I mean, do you buy a house or a car and then ask them what the price gonna be every month once you buy it? No, you do it before. You don't even start negotiating paperwork and interest rates until you even can get a good idea of how much they would take for A, B, C, and D. So I think you do that stuff before. But the problem is, I feel like the problem is oftentimes what you find out is that people, and I see all the time, people get into relationships and if we honest, it's just based off of sex. It's not love, it's lust. You see him, you like the way he look. He got some, got a six pack, or got a nice, dressed nice, nice car. You see her, she thick, and you like, yo, I want that joint. So what? So it kind of begins as a sexual relationship, and then it kind of develops into a relationship. It's like by that time, it's like your whole relationship was really the foundation of your relationship. Really is just sex. Then you're trying to develop it into a relationship. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
So it's like it's kind of like it was done. It's like
it was done hastily.
It's kind of like you trying to cut the grass on a rainy day. It's like, well, that's backwards anyways. Like, or again, trying to discuss how much they want for the car after you buy it. It's like that's backwards anyways. Like that's backwards. I mean, people make it work. How? I don't know. I mean, I don't even want to think about it, but I don't even really care. But people make it work. I mean, if work is what you want to call it, but people make it function,
Yeah.
But I mean, people just, I guess, just find a way to coexist in chaos. I'm just thinking about it as I'm thinking about it. Like, how do you even turn a relationship that was based off of sex into one that is a relationship? You know what I'm saying? And then what's the what's the foundation? Like you were saying, like, the foundation, like what's the foundation based off of sex?
Yeah.
So how do you rebuild something that was built on something that was shallow anyways?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm sure you can do it, but
but there's a lot of, you have to go back and kind of like undo, you know what I'm saying? You have to go back and undo those things. I think people don't know how to do, if they didn't know how to start the relationship off in the beginning, it's like they definitely don't know how to go back and undo something and start, instead of, okay, I'm just going to cut it off here. It went sour. I'm going to just cut it off here and then try to,
recalibrate.
Not recalibrate, just go somewhere else and see how that go. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to cut it off, see how it go. And then you're probably like 4 or 5 different boyfriend, girlfriends later, still trying to make it work. And you didn't know where you went wrong in the beginning. And it's almost like you don't have control over how it's gonna, or you feel like you've lost control over the narrative, so to speak. I hate to say that you can necessarily shape it, but it's like you can set the standard. Even if you can't set the standard in your relationship with someone in particularly that you're with right now, you can set the standard for yourself.
Yeah.
Remember, well, you don't remember this, or you may remember it because we were friends at the time. This was before we were married, but we were still like in the group chat and just kind of talking amongst our friends or whatever. And I had shared with you, some guy came up to me like at the mall and was trying to like get my number or whatever. So I exchanged numbers with him. But then I was like, oh, you know what? His vibe was just kind of off. Like, I can tell there was a couple of red flags to begin with, but I just was like, whatever. I gave my number anyway. I was just at the point where, at that time in my life, I was at the point where I was like, you know what? I'm deciding that if he mentions like, oh, send me a pic, or like, if we date, because I know that had become a thing too. Well, if we date, or if we go out on a date and I'm paying for something, then I should be able to like hold your hand or come back to your place or whatever. He had said that to me, and I was just like, man, this is just straight off the conversation. He don't even know me. So that right there is telling me what he wanted already. It's like, okay, so just because you take me out to dinner, that should be like an entryway into my home. Absolutely not. That, I referred back to my standard. You know what I'm saying? I was like, no, not going to happen. And then I think he took that as, oh, she's a good Christian girl. So, after we stopped the conversation that night, the next day he texted me, good morning, have a blessed day. And I was just like, if you don't get out of here, dude, like it wasn't that, and I didn't mention anything about, being a Christian, being a believer. I just said that, no, this was my standard. And you kind of see how he shifted to, try to get what he wanted. And I think he even said at the end of our conversation the night before, like, oh, yeah, this is going to be a challenge for me. Oh, yeah. And I'm just like, nah, dude. You're not going anywhere. This is not a challenge for you. It's going to be more so of a cutoff for you because this is where it ends. That was me referring back to my standards. And I think that we don't go into don't go into relationships having a standard because, you know, we believe the lie that, oh, there's not so many good men out here. And I say it's a lie. I mean, there may not be a lot of good men out there, but how many men do you need?
It depends.
That depends.
Another topic for another day.
Oh, another topic. How many men do you need? Yeah.
Just the beginning of our marriage. Just learning your spouse and how they communicate, which was one of the issues in our marriage, and just kind of it's still learning your spouse, how they communicate, and how to articulate our needs and desires was some of the biggest hiccups in the beginning of our marriage. And as time goes on, there becomes other barriers and other things that kind of present themselves to be obstacles in your marriage. So
absolutely, I've enjoyed this conversation with you today.
Yeah, I have too. Again, thank you guys for again, you can listen to our podcast on Facebook. We put up videos of the audio. Also can follow us on Instagram. Thank you again for rocking with us today. Peace.